stand up, fight to belong. Life ain't so easy when you're burnt to the bone. Oh yeah, in our time, no one's gonna tell us what to do. We gotta stand up, fight to belong. Roll with the punches, yeah. We've got to be strong. We gotta stand up, fight to belong. Life ain't so easy when you've been right to the bone. Stand up, fight to belong. Roll with the punches, yeah. We've got to be strong. We gotta stand up. That is Stand Up. That is the latest installment of Helix. We got a guy that's waiting in the green room who wrote the lyrics for that song. And that's an interesting story how that song actually came about. We'll talk about that and some more stuff tonight with this guy. I'm going to also get Gord to drop some names tonight because he knows a ton of people. He's met a ton of people over the years, and those people have influenced his writing style, everything from his writing style to his playing. And he's in his own project called Blue Bones. We're going to talk about that tonight as well. And this guy is a singer, songwriter. He's a musician. He is a producer, and he's written a lot of really great songs over the years. And his name is Gord Prior. He's in London, Ontario tonight. Hey, Gord, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Awesome to have you here, brother.
Thank you. Good to be here.
We're gonna just go split screen here if I can get rid of this piece of work here we got here. I finally found that video after shopping around for it. It only took half an hour, but we ended up with it. So
Very cool.
it's all good. So you guys wrote that song like a year ago, right?
Yeah, over a year ago, and it happened really quick. I was just down visiting Brian and Linda Vollmer in Florida, and Brian's like, "Hey, let's go visit my friend Johnny Hyatt and play you the song we're working on." And Brian and Johnny started playing this new idea they had. And for some reason, it sparked a melody in my head as well. And I said, "You guys mind if I sing, what I'm hearing in my head?" And they joined in with what I was doing. And then I got my phone out to record everything real quick in case, something happened or we didn't want to forget anything. And within 10, 20 minutes, we had a song in place. And then we had a few laughs, and it was a nice hot day in Florida. And then me and Brian carried on our way and went and had dinner that night. And the phone, had all the evidence of this song on it. And that's when I got back to London. I worked on it more with the other players and stuff like that. And we eventually, a lot of different people were involved and all added their part. And we ended up with something I don't think anybody kind of really knew exactly how it would turn out, because some of us didn't even meet each other that are on this track. So, somebody would contribute, like, for instance, the drums were done down in Florida, but we weren't there when they were done. So drum track was great, and it all just worked out. Same with the keyboard parts from Michael T. Ross. And you put it all together, and we got this song. So it's got some really good friends on it, good people, a lot of good energy. And it wasn't forced at all. That's the cool thing. It was not planned. So
and it's a true collaborative process too that went into it.
Oh yeah, everybody, so it started just with the basic idea, me and Brian and Johnny on guitar, and me and Brian, singing harmonies and coming up with ideas. And then we just kept building on the track, added the drums, added proper guitar tracks. And people were sending files back and forth with email. And when we had everybody's parts basically all together, we put a bed track together for Brian to come in and sing over. And we spent a full day in the studio with Brian, tracking the song, experimenting with different vocal styles and ideas. And it turned out really cool in the end.
And it wasn't supposed to be what it was, right? Like it was a different song when you first heard it.
Yeah, Brian had a different melody and different lyrics, and so
Different song title too.
different song title.
What was it? Death by a Thousand Cuts or something like that, and pour alcohol on it or something.
Something, yeah, that really rings a bell. And I don't know. It was this maybe just the fact I was in the sunshine coming out of the wintry weather in London that year, and I felt like we needed to do something really kind of uplifting and anthem rock, and it just shows you Brian's intuition is good. Like he doesn't let if an idea he believes in comes along, he'll run with it. Whether it's his idea or not, he's always thinking about what's best for the song, right? What's best for the band, and
And for those of you that are watching tonight, we're talking about Brian Vollmer from Helix,
yeah.
and the song came about spontaneously, but your visit to Florida was a spontaneous thing too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I know what I was doing. I was having dinner at the Church Key. I was sitting at the bar. It was winter. It was like, when it's dark at 3:30,
Yep.
and the snow was coming down in downtown London, and I'm on the phone with Brian down in Florida, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna buy a ticket right now and just come down and visit you for a few days. I was only there for probably 4 days, but we packed a lot in, and we wrote this song.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and you went down there. You went down there, and I know that Brian said you were in a place where you needed to go get away and be energized,
yeah,
and by getting energized, you heard about this song they were writing. You guys went to Johnny Hyatt's place,
yeah, it was
a-
pretty.
and then the whole thing just became this surreal, you know, um, collaborative approach to writing a song.
It did, and I remember it very well. It could be it could be like in a movie in a funny way, because it was like just the setting. We're in this really interesting neighborhood in Florida, in a trailer park area, and just the whole vibe of the place and everything that was happening. It was so, you're just thrown into that. 1 minute you're in London, Ontario, the same day you're down there, and the vibe was just so cool and real. And if you could see the three of us writing this song, it did look like something out of the Trailer Park Boys. And Brian, he's in that show sometimes, right?
Well, it's not something he's unfamiliar with, right?
Yeah, just any minute now, Julian would have walked in. Like it was genuine though, right? And just a lot of fun. And Johnny's a great guy, and everybody just did this out of the love of music, right? So
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about that is that you guys all are lifers when it comes to music. You guys have all been involved in playing and recording and writing music all of your lives.
yeah, that's true.
Uh, and you met Brian as you were a very young man when you met Brian.
Yeah, I mean, so Brian's a little bit older than me, and I remember loving Helix as a kid, back home and coming home from school, watching the Pepsi Power Hour, and Helix had those rock videos back then, and music was such a big part of our lives. And yeah, I met Brian on the Adelaide bus back in probably, I would say 89, 1988, 89. And
Right.
I just walked up and introduced myself, asked if are you Brian Vollmer? And we kind of hit it off. And I was one of his first vocal students too. There was one guy ahead of me, but definitely in the first 3 or 4 students that he had. And I took vocal lessons from Ed Johnson, who taught Brian for 25 years. I went to Ed for about a year previous, so I had some background in it. So Brian started out more like my vocal coach, actually, and then they were working on Back for Another Taste album, and they asked me to sing some harmonies on Midnight Express. And then the next year they were nominated for Best Heavy Rock Video at Much Music Video Awards, and they performed Running Wild in the 21st Century live in the parking lot that year. And they had me and my bass player from Blue Bones join them on stage to do harmonies for that song live, which was that was a fun day and fun night, because I think it was the very first Much Music Video Awards, and it was an open house, and everybody was there, from Blue Rodeo to Atlanta Miles to Colin James. And from what I recall, it was free food and free booze, and just a free for all.
Yeah, you're not one of the only students of Brian's to go on and write and record music.
Oh, he's got some really well known students, right? That country singer fella, and oh, there's quite a few, and he's booked solid, eh? Like, he doesn't even have to advertise. But what he teaches it so well, and there's very few people that really know how to teach bel canto. So yeah, he's
Yeah,
taught.
Ed was like he was the guy in London to go to, right?
Yeah, he was in Fergus, so we always had
Oh,
to.
Fergus.
Everybody had to drive to Fergus, and if you wanted to go to Ed, and back then I was doing, demanding 3 sets a night back in those days, and 6 nights a week. And so going to Ed back then was kind of crucial to not losing your voice, because the band depended on you to have a voice every night for months on end, right? So Ed helped a lot with that kind of thing.
Yeah, because Brian went to Ed because Brian had at one point in time developed vocal nodes, right?
Yeah, when Brian was young, before Helix had their first gold record, he was told to stop singing, and Ed taught Brian the proper technique, and then I believe Brian kept going back to Ed his entire career, and that's what saved Brian's voice, and helped him to become the singer that he became over the years.
Yeah,
So,
we got Brent Durner's watching tonight,
oh, awesome! Hey, Brent, how are you? That's
and
great.
and I remember Brent telling me that every time they did a show, like Brian would go through this warm up exercise with his vocals before they did a live show.
Yeah, yeah, I remember those exercises well. I drove my band nuts doing those, right? Because they sound goofy, but it makes a big difference, warming up and getting ready for a show like that. I know other guys, they just go out cold, no warm up at all, and they're awesome.
Right.
You never know.
Yeah, I my notifications thing's going off. I keep turning it off, and Windows keeps turning it on. Idiots.
Uh,
They don't know how to do anything. But Brent, what do you think, Brent? Do I look like I've been bobbing for apples in a deep fryer tonight? A day of motor, a day of motorcycle riding again, is what it is. Um, Yeah, I think that the process that you've been through with right from day one, writing music with Brian and performing, and then of course starting up your own project. Uh, was Blue Bones your first musical project?
no. The first band I was in when I was 15 years old, we wrote and recorded, and I actually got the masters back a couple of years ago, and planning on mixing some of that stuff. So I've always been involved in writing, and I was in a lot of bands after I left Sudbury that always did original music. So I have I have about 130 published songs at SOCAN, like self-registered, and there's some others that are still waiting to be published, either co-writes or songs I've produced or written myself. Um, so there's people with more songs, I suppose, but I'm still writing. I've got a bunch of new songs that are waiting to be finished right now, with Blue Bones and some other co-writers and stuff. So there's just not enough time, to do to get right.
Not there's not enough hours in the day. I mean, and especially with me when summer comes on, because I'm about, motorcycle riding in the summertime. So the last thing I want to be doing is being tied down, you know, putting out music for people when I should be out motorcycle riding.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was a beautiful day for that today. It was nice
It,
and
it started out foggy though. We rode in the fog to our breakfast this morning, and when we go out for a day of riding, usually our days start a lot earlier than it did this morning. But this morning, when I got up first thing this morning, you could barely see across the street. It was so foggy.
I saw that today too. I'm up here in the clouds, but you couldn't see the ground, right? It was like
No,
we
so
were in.
yeah, we waited till like 9 o'clock, and then we went down to Elmer for breakfast. And we usually go to one of these breakfast restaurants, and get the whole shebang. Bacon, eggs, you know, rye toast, all that stuff, coffee. Get all that in you. Because I mean, here's the thing: people don't realize that when you're riding a motorcycle, you're burning about 500 calories an hour.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, because you're constantly moving on that motorcycle. You're either fighting the wind, and you're leaning into curves, especially if you're doing a lot of today we did a lot of twisty roads. And
okay,
so when you get on the twisties, you're leaning right, you're leaning left, and there's some of the roads got switchbacks, and switchbacks are always a lot of fun because you're leaning right, then left, and then right again. So
yeah.
that's
But you'll feel it probably over the next couple of days if this was your first ride, right?
oh,
Of the year.
this is we started riding this year in March.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, I remember back in March we had some, like, 20-degree days.
Yeah,
In fact, in March and April, I think it was in April. Yeah, not. It was just about 2 weeks ago. We rode all the way down to Windsor and down the Detroit River and all the way around to Amherstburg and up the other side on Lake Erie. And we were in our shirt sleeves that day. It was like 80 degrees.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's weird for this time of year, right?
yeah. Well,
Um, what's that, Gord?
we're getting there. The weather's getting better every day.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm getting conditioned because this summer we're riding across Canada, so that will be, you
Uh,
know, one of the rides of a lifetime.
oh, absolutely.
I think we'll be riding about 12,000 k in total.
That's
We're,
great. Well,
we're going
take
to be
lots
gone.
and photos, and people will check in probably on your daily updates, right?
I want you to help me write a book about it.
Okay. Well, get your iPhone out or your Android or whatever, and start taking notes and taking video, and that's a good start because you can always
I'm
trans.
gonna journal. I'm gonna journal every day of the trip, and we'll be gone like at least 30 days on this trip. So.
Ah, nice. Yeah, that'll be
I,
it.
I've never lived on the road for 30 days, so I'm about to find out what that's all about. Although I did kind of live on the road in 1971.
Okay.
We packed up the house trailer with my parents and we drove to Saskatchewan.
I've done that drive, and I've lived in Saskatchewan, so I know it well. Yeah, that's a long drive.
It's a long drive. Well, we didn't go across the prairies so much. We actually went through the states when we went, so it's a little more interesting there than though going across the prairies like.
Yeah, yeah, you get hypnotized by the same thing. Our
we
drummer would drive for like 20 hours. We'd be like, "Steve, are you okay?" He'd be like, "I'm fine." And he's the guy
Now,
that drove.
interesting. I had a guy on the show last week, Phil Anderson. I don't know if you saw the show or not, but Phil's done production for bands like Econoline Crush and whatnot.
Hmm.
And we were talking about all the great bands before the show. We were talking about great bands that came out of Saskatchewan.
Yeah, there was a lot of good bands out of the prairie, even Econoline Crush, obviously Nickelback. When I was younger, I think Kick Axe came out of Saskatchewan. Um, There's a few. Was Harlequin out of that area?
I think Harlequin came out of Saskatchewan as well.
Yeah.
And you got, the start of
Don't.
the prairies there the middle part of the prairies in Winnipeg, you got, Bachman Turner
Oh,
Overdrive.
insane. Winnipeg, they hit it out of the park, right? With Neil.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty crazy. I saw Brian was at the BTO show in London.
Yeah, yeah. I heard that was a lot of people really enjoyed that. I was gonna go, but I was busy, and I've probably seen April Wine, I don't know, 50 times in my life. So,
Right.
but it would have been nice to see them. Actually, I got a message from Brian Greenway today, actually through Messenger. So we keep in touch, but he was busy on this tour, and and I was busy, but I'll catch them again.
Now you know a ton of people in a lot of different bands, right? Over the years, because you
Well, yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah, I do. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we toured with April Wine. I think it's just all the bands we grew up playing with, and a lot of us all still stay in touch, right? So there's the local music scene, and there was the Ontario scene, and the Canadian scene, and there was the whole Much Music kind of tribe from the early mid '90s, and so we did shows with everybody from My Mother Earth to Our Lady Peace to the Tea Party to Slick Toxic, Lee Aaron, Honeymoon Suite, April Wine, toured across the country with Kim Mitchell. Uh, Knew the guys in Barry and 3 Days Grace used to travel with us when we toured with Slick Toxic before he was in 3 Days Grace. And so a lot of us just, and not just musicians, road crew as well, right? Different guys that are still out there road managing bands. And gosh, there's one pal of ours was a house tech at the Gasworks. He drove me home one night because I would sing at the Gasworks in 1987, downtown Toronto, finish the last set and take a Greyhound bus home to London. And I had a young family back then, and I missed the bus this one night. Soundman drives me home, stays on the couch, drives me all the way back to London, drives me back to the show the next day. Anyhow, he moved all the way. Like he's one of the top guys at Live Nation now. So I've
who
met him.
who were you playing with at that time, Gord?
Steel Lily, which is a band out of Brantford. I went up and sang with them at a matinee in Sudbury, Ontario when I was 17, and they fired their singer, and it was quite a dramatic entrance into their band because they were all very close. But I was this guy, the new guy, and they had a whole year of gigs booked and their own tour bus, and they were my age, and they played the music I loved, and we dressed up like Motley Crue, and we were, oh my gosh, what a wild time, man, because we played a lot of shows, and
So
we,
your entrance into that was like kind of like Steve Perry's entrance into Journey.
I suppose, yeah. Uh, Segueing into Journey, the singer from My Mother Earth replaced me at one point in Steel Lily and did a Journey tribute. Edwin did a Journey tribute at one point. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but sorry, Edwin. But yeah, no, and he did a good job. He did, you know,
Wow.
from that to One More Astronaut, right? So yeah, I mean, musicians are all pals, and everybody it's a small community, right? So, and I'm a fan of other bands, so it's not just playing music. Like, if you're a super fan of music, we go to shows when we were young, and even if
Your
I was playing, I'd
your
be at Kingswood
your
with.
audio's mucking up there, Gord. I don't know if that's your Wi-Fi or what it is, but your audio just went for a dump.
Oh, really? Okay. Is it still like that?
Yeah, it sounds like you sound like Darth Vader, and the batteries are running low.
Okay, hang on. I'm gonna reload this page. Okay.
Oh, there we go. He's going to come back in and give her a try again. Yeah, something really weird going on there with the audio tonight. I don't know. It might have been his Wi-Fi. There, it just did it again. Let's check.
Okay.
That's a little better.
I'm back. How's
No,
that?
no, it's doing it again. Are you running anything in the background?
No. Let me. Uh,
Yeah, you're just sounding like Darth Vader, and the batteries are running low.
that is really weird.
Yeah, it all of a sudden just started doing it. It just all of a sudden went. Vroom.
Oh, someone says I hear him fine here.
Now your audio is echoing and it's like completely distorted.
Hmm.
Huh. That is some weird stuff. Oh,
Someone's saying it's fine on their end. Is maybe
for a minute there your voice was normal and then all of a sudden it just went bleh again. I don't know, that's just a strange thing, man.
yeah.
Derek Cummings. Do you know that name?
Yeah, yeah, I know Derek well. Yeah, Derek says it sounds good on his end too, Ken.
Oh, okay. He says both are sounding good in this. So maybe it's just in my audio.
Yeah,
Uh,
maybe.
let us know if the audio acts weird. It's maybe just acting weird in my ear, but that's fine. Let's just go with it. Derek says Gord replaced the original frontman of Raucous on a gig at Mingles. One fan took umbrage to Gord and sent him flying through the drum kit.
Probably because his girlfriend was sending me roses and shots.
It was one of those things, was it?
I have no idea. Mingles was a rough and tough place. It wasn't the first time we dodged a few ashtrays or. Yeah, I do. I do remember. I was singing a ballad. It wasn't a song I was even particularly fond of doing in the set, and some guy just out of his mind just came up. I didn't even. None of us knew who he was, and he actually. Yeah, he threw me right into the drums, and I probably weighed 110 pounds, soaking wet back then. And
Was his girlfriend all over you or something or what?
oh no, nobody knew who he was, right? So I think back in those days, the bouncers. I don't think he came back from that night. I think they took him outside. Yeah, I'm amazed we survived because we're up there in lipstick and eyeshadow and mascara and spandex and playing some of the roughest uh, bars in the province and in the country, right? So,
London used to be one of those places where you could see about six different bands on any given Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night. I can remember we would start if we were really if we started off in a mellow mood, we'd start off at the fire hall,
yeah, I
and
remember the.
then we go over to the ride out,
Mm-hmm.
or as people used to call it, the rid out, and then down to Mingles, Fry Fogels. Um, there are a couple other bars along the way there, and then the old city hall.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so
Legendary.
yeah, so you could hear a ton of different, and of course, if the city hall, you never know when Ronnie Hawkins was going to be there playing
Yeah. Yeah.
because
What
that was his pub, wasn't it?
it's a tiny bit before my time, but apparently, yeah, some real characters hung. I've heard rumors like Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson have hung out there and
Yeah,
played people like that.
I remember seeing Doug Vardy playing there in Sea Dog. I think it was.
Wow. Yeah.
That was a long time ago, man.
I'm, Doug's still out playing and rocking and sounds great.
I think we're talking like 1978, somewhere around there.
Wow.
Um, the 70s, downtown London was rocking. You could go down the strip in London, down Dundas, and hit at least six bars that had live music going on, at least 3 nights of the week. A lot of bands were in there playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then some of them would play Saturday afternoon matinees.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the matinee thing and back then bands played, Monday to Saturday, right? 3 sets a night, starting 9:30 on a Monday and all through the whole week. Sometimes we do Monday to Wednesday in one city and then Thursday to Saturday in another city. And
Mondays must have been dead.
it was well, and everybody was young and just having the time of their lives, really, you know. getting to play music every night.
What was the least number of people you ever remember playing to?
Oh gosh, like we all bands from back then would play to the bar staff on a Monday, right?
Right,
And then you say, yeah, you're in Sault Ste. Marie on Monday, you play to the bar staff and maybe one table of locals that come out on Mondays to see how the band's going to be that week. And if they
right,
go back and tell their friends that we were good, then by the weekend it'd be, filling up.
right.
Uh, and each night would get progressively more people. And
How
the
how instrumental were the bar staff? Like, how instrumental was your relationship with the bar staff and them endorsing you guys and getting friends and, their contacts to come out to your shows?
Well, back then, like it was very different than now. First of all, the clubs had large lighting and PA systems, like usually pretty good quality too. It was a standard that you had to have a decent sound system, decent lighting. For the most part, most clubs did so, or you would have, and we traveled with our own as well, a lot of equipment, and but we didn't advertise our shows back then because we're on the road. We're traveling, we're constantly moving, and there's no internet. So the clubs had their own built-in audiences, right? And I think, um, like you said, everybody went to their favorite bar on the weekend to see the bands and so in the era of like, say it was 1989 or something like that, everybody was playing the music that was popular, right? And
Right,
so a lot of us played the same set list, right? Like we'd come into the Sioux and do 3 sets a night. The next week, another band like Sire would come in and they do 3 sets a night, but guaranteed half of the material was the same set list we did, right? Like
right.
everybody doing Motley Crue and Whitesnake and Scorpions, and everybody did Zeppelin. Like there was these standard songs that you had to do, and then you slipped in your own originals back then, and it's kind of, well, that's how a lot of people got started.
I remember one of the guys that I played with. We built our own light cans.
Oh yeah, yeah, we did too. Yeah.
I mean, it was really funny because we built these light cans and we made them out of furnace pipe.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to like the local sheet metal guy here in town and got him to bend us up these furnace pipes
Yeah.
for these lights. And some of them were like 10-inch and some of them were like 6-inch, just big enough for the bulb to go in.
Yeah.
and and then because they looked like furnace pipe, we decided to paint them black,
Right.
right?
Got to do
Well,
that.
well, the first few shows we did, you could smell the fucking paint on them. It
And
was
they're
a
heating up and smoking,
Oh
right?
yeah, it was a god awful smell as the paint's curing on these freaking light cans, right? We're playing, and it smelled kind of almost like a fishy kind of smell sometimes. It was just the
Yeah.
most
And
bizarre thing.
well, those lights in those days, I think they were 1,000-watt par cans, is what they were called, right?
Yep,
1,000 watts.
yep,
And you put the gels in them, and it was really Spinal Tap in a lot of ways. Like we traveled with a light guy.
yep,
We traveled with a guy who just did follow spot and
yep,
pyro.
yep,
So we rolled into town with a show. Like we had a lot of stuff. We had bombs that went off on cue. We used to have bombs we'd put up in the ceiling, and I would point, and they would go off. It was
yep.
like, oh my god! And the
We
out
had we had 10 light cans, and so they had 500-watt photo bulbs in them,
right.
big massive flood bulbs in 'em. They got hot as
Yeah,
hell,
that
right?
was, yeah, they're very warm. Like today, the lighting is not like that. It's
No, no, that's all LED lighting. And so we'd have these 10 cans, 5,000 watts where the light was a lot of light back then.
oh yeah, and it
And
was
then and you get all those 10, all 10 of those, and you had to make sure that you had the circuitry to be able to run your light board or or you were popping breakers in the hotel.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man.
Well, do you remember the band Sire? They were a really well-known Southern Ontario band.
Yeah,
Uh,
well Jamie who's playing in Helix is originally from Sire, right?
Yeah.
Doug
So,
Weir, Doug Weir, right?
hmm
Yeah,
like I'm talking 85 maybe. They were playing Hull, Quebec, and we were playing Hull, Quebec. We were at a club called Roxanne's. Everybody would remember Roxanne's if you were in a band in that.
Roxanne.
Yeah. Well, they were playing this other club, and we were both staying at the same band house above this um, car dealership.
Right.
And anyhow, yeah. So between their band, our band, and the road crew, all getting ready to go do our show starting at 9 o'clock around there, a lot of hair dryers would be on, right? 86, 85. And we would blow the power, and all the old guys drinking in the bar downstairs were getting pissed off. And long story short, we got ran out of town, Sire and Steel Lily, and yeah, it's quite an ordeal.
Yeah, I mean the hair dryer was a big thing for the hair bands back in the day, right? Because
It got ridiculous, yes.
you're back combing your hair and putting hairspray in, and
Yeah, yeah. Can you imagine? And we thought, yeah, well, that was the times, right? Motley Crue were a big band, and all that whole thing was happening, and then
some
Nirvana came along
some
today and
crazy stuff, man.
put that right out.
Some some crazy stuff. We could talk. I think we should have a show where we talk about all this nostalgia stuff because I'll tell you. We do another show. We'll do one about this, and I'll talk about the night I nearly blew a band up on stage.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that'd be a good story. You see, like,
That was like my foyer into pyrotechnics.
wow. See, like a band like Helix, they just really came up through all those clubs, but then they made it to the stadium level and had an American record deal, and they got to go really really far. But they remember the same kind of these terrible hotel rooms we had to stay in. We didn't care though. We were young. It was fun, and you know, someone should write a book about what it was like to tour you
Right.
know, in the winter time up in Canada with the long drives between gigs and just the crazy adventures that everybody has some
Right.
story there.
Talk about history and music writing because we're going to talk a little bit about music writing, and then we'll stay on that topic maybe till the end of the show tonight. But right now, I'm re-releasing the Helix second album, White Lace and Black Leather,
Nice.
and I'm remastering each track
Oh,
as
great.
I'm releasing them. So I'm mastering them just before we put them out for release, and we're going to be releasing Mainline.
Okay, yeah.
And here's an interesting thing. So when you're mastering a track, you listen to it through so many times,
Yeah.
right? And then you come back to it, and then you come back to it. You cleanse your palate each time, and you come back to it, and you listen to it, and you go, "Oh, a little more punch here, a little less 1000K here," right? And you're hearing different things that you want to eliminate in the recording, but there's things you're trying to accentuate, but you're only working with a wave master.
Right. Yeah.
So, working with a wave master, you're affecting the whole mix
Mhm.
when you're remastering it. And so you have to really pay attention to a lot of things.
Yeah, you would.
But one of the things is getting the right amount of stereo separation because I noticed back in the day when they were mixing this stuff analog, the mix was really really tight.
Right. Yeah, yeah. It was a different.
And yeah, it was a different approach to producing back in the day. And of course, the what ends up on the production is the result of the whatever the producer decides to do.
Yeah.
And is the producer always right?
I wouldn't say that. No, I don't think so. I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
has to listen and have a map or a pathway to get there, but kind of sometimes someone has a better idea than a good producer will recognize that opportunity, I think, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the limitations of what existed back in 1981 in terms of production, right? So you're talking analog, you're still talking about, you know, using a razor blade on tapes to get fades and all this other stuff where you're scratching chromium off a tape to get
Right.
a natural fade. I mean, what a niche skill that would be.
Yeah, it was an art. It was a true art, and we were so lucky in Blue Bones to do our first real record at Phase One Studios with Paul Gross. Now, Paul owned Phase One, so he was a well, he is a lovely guy, and he had great stories because he watched all these bands come through the front doors of his studio, right? And Bob Ezrin had an office there, and all Bob Dylan had recorded there, and pretty much, well, BTO, Trooper, uh, almost the lion's share, Tom Cochrane, Red Rider albums, Platinum Blonde. I think Helix did an album there, Glass Tiger. Pretty much everybody had a story at Phase One. And it was a tape studio. And I remember to get echo delays and stuff, they would be running quarter-inch tape like all through the control room, you know, meters and meters and meters of tape. And so it's really organic. And then just putting things out of phase to get that effect you hear on Queen records, and plate reverb, which means there's a room in the back with a plate, and the reverb plates back there. And
Yeah,
just,
natural room reverb.
yeah, really cool. Just a cool studio. And we learned so much just hearing his stories. And I remember being in the studio with Harem Scarum with Harry Hess, and he would stack a lot of great harmonies. Harem Scarum's known for having like these huge harmonies in the choruses, and Harry was good at building these stacked harmony sections. He'd get them all blended and mixed, and he'd put them onto a quarter-inch tape, and he'd fly them into the song. Like, so now you're playing back the song on 2-inch with the drums and the lead guitars and the bass, and you want to insert these huge harmonies, and they'd be
Right.
sitting in a separate quarter-inch machine with his thumb on the reel, and let go and put it like manually and slow it down and slide it into the track, and like all by hand and ear, right? And now, of course, it's copy and paste on Pro Tools. You can build a section, paste it, replicate
Right.
it.
Well, the cool thing about this is that this was, I think this either came off half-inch or quarter-inch masters,
Oh,
and
nice.
then it was put into a wave format.
Oh, good.
So the cool thing about this was recorded on SSL, on 2-inch tape originally, and then it got bounced down to either half-inch or what was do you remember the standard in the day was a half-inch or quarter-inch masters?
I think it was half-inch masters for the font.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Yes. So I know some use quarter-inch masters. I mean, guys that would probably know this really, really well would be Harry Hess for sure.
Yeah.
Be a good question to ask. We should get Harry on the show.
He's a busy guy, but I could always ask him.
We
he's
should get
on
him on
he's
the
on
we
Zoom
should
a
get him on
lot.
the show, and you and I can interview him.
Well, he just got back from a European tour. I bet you he's got some good stories on that.
Yeah, I bet he's got some war stories from that tour, and I like Harry. He was a very nice guy. We've had a few chats online.
Yeah.
Uh, he recommended Microforum,
Yeah.
which is doing some pressing right now with one of the artists on the label. So I mean, some really really great stuff there in terms of people that you rub elbows with. But anyways, I want to talk about this song of Helix's just for a second.
Yeah.
His main line that was written by Brent Durner,
Oh, nice.
and when you listen to the chorus, the melody just sticks in your head,
Yeah.
right? Main line, like and there's that whole thing in there, you know, and it's an interesting choice of lyric. I want to get Brent to send me the lyrics so I can sync the lyrics to the track, because I don't think everybody can make out exactly all the words that Brian's singing.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
on that track, and it's just an interesting song. But what I noticed was the mix was so tight, so being able just to take and pull that mix apart a little bit and do some stereo separation in it.
Right,
Now you've got right and left guitars, and you can hear the harmonies out of right and left channels, and you can hear them crossing each other now,
right.
right?
Okay, yeah,
You can hear the the cowbell and the wood block, which is actually predominantly right channel, but you couldn't tell it in the mix because it sounds so close to the middle, right?
right. Yeah,
You,
yeah,
you put a little stereo separation on it, all of a sudden you've got the cowbell over here on the right side where it's supposed to be, because that's the side it's being played on and being mic'd on in the studio.
right. When's this coming out?
It's gonna come out soon. I just got all the ISWCs from Brian,
Okay.
so we can embed them in the work. So that's something that I started doing probably about 2 years ago,
Uh-huh.
embedding ISWCs. That is the international standard work code that's assigned to the owner of the publishing or the written works of the song.
Right.
So when we talk about royalties, there's a whole bunch of different royalty pathways that exist between the master recording, which is the ISRC or the International Standard Recording Code that's assigned to each recording, right?
Yeah.
So the cool thing about this, because these are re-releases, they're all being assigned unique, brand new ISRC codes.
Okay. Yeah. So for the new master and the new release.
Yeah, and every time you release a new master or publish music, even if it's the same track, it should always be a new ISRC.
Right.
So the one thing that I learned through the publishing, educational side of things is that one song could have 10 different releases, and each one of those releases would have a unique ISRC.
Right. Right.
And because that ISRC is a digital fingerprint of the song, you can track the sales of each one of those releases separately using that ISRC. If you use the same ISRC, it's going to show up as the same sale,
Right. Yeah. So you can
right?
break it down into more of a specific list, right? And
Right. So what we're seeing is that these remasters are
mhm.
getting way more attention
Yeah.
than the original recordings.
Interesting. There you go.
So through analytics, one of the things we learned is by improving that master output,
Hmm.
it's people are noticing it. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story here. My wife and daughter are in Niagara Falls a couple of weeks back
Yeah.
to see. They saw Vixen
Oh,
and
cool.
Slaughter and um, 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 ah, I gotta think. Ah, 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 ah. It'll come to me. They
Yeah.
saw three bands. They saw them at the Windsor Casino, and George Hines is standing in line, and he strikes up a conversation with my wife. Do you know George?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Great guy.
So did lights for Helix, right?
Yeah. And
And
Sasha. Yeah.
so he said to me, he said to my wife, he said, been listening to those new mixes of Helix, those remasters of Helix coming out, and they're really good. That guy that's working on them knows what he's doing, right? And she says, and my wife's she's catfishing him now, right?
Yeah.
Because George doesn't know my wife, and she's got a great sense of humor, right? So she's catfishing him. She says, "Yeah, well, who's the guy you're talking about, George? Like, who's the guy and where is he?" He goes, "Ah, man, I gotta think of it for a minute." And Michelle just goes about to say Indie Tunes, right? And he goes,
Yeah.
"Indie Tunes, that guy. Indie Tunes, that guy." Michelle said, "Oh, Indie Tunes. What do you think of him? Oh, he knows his shit, right?" And
That's great.
my wife says to him, "That's my husband."
Yeah.
George goes, "No shit, really?" Yeah.
That's
So,
great.
So it's nice to get that random, sort of, validation that what you're doing is making a difference in people's ears.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
you're improving on a song that fans love, but you're making it sound better for people now that have earbuds and headphones and you know.
well, and I listen to the mixes, right? And I go, there's some really great instrumentation going on in this album, but it's kind of buried because the mix is so tight,
Right. Yeah.
right? Um, I'm one of these guys, and some people go, oh, you add that in the mix sounds too squishy.
Yeah.
Well, which is more squishy? The stuff that you compress down like this, so it's all down like this, or the stuff that I open up like this?
Yeah.
Because you now hear the movement of the music, you hear it living, you hear it breathing. You know,
That's be a trend. Like it's changed again, but music at one point was getting so hyper compressed and so just too much of everything all into one space. Like, um, and you can hear that, on certain Nickelback recordings when they were at their peak. Like just everything's on 10. Sounds great, but when you look at the wavelength on a computer screen, it's just solid. There's
yeah.
nothing like that happening, right? So I mean, and people got used to that sound too, right? That really compressed, thick, guitars fighting with the vocal, and so I mean, back in the older recordings, there was more space naturally, right, and more room to breathe. Like you really hear it on Zeppelin recordings, like space between instruments and stuff,
I
right?
I really like to do that in our recordings. Like when we're recording our Green Ink stuff live here in the studio,
Hmm.
you can hear all three guitars
Yeah.
and in the mix, and you can hear them complementing one another.
Right.
You can hear the bass guitar working with the kick drum, and you can hear the snare up in the mix either on top of the vocal or just under it.
Yeah.
You know,
Nice.
and those things that you're looking for in that mix that gives you that massive separation. To me, that's,
Yeah.
and they call that dynamic range.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time studying dynamic range, and it can enhance. Now, if you put too much of it, right? Too much of a good thing is not a good thing, right? Sometimes less is more,
Yeah.
right? So when I start the stereo separation with the Helix stuff, I have this really cool plugin that allows me to open up the stereo sweeps, so the panning on the
Right.
right and the left channels. And as I'm doing that, I can start to hear things open up a little bit in the stereo. Even the vocal, instead of the vocal being, really compressed right here and hitting you in the face,
Yeah.
it's more out over the mix.
Right. Right.
So now you've got this nice, as you pull it apart and you add a stereo effect into the, pull more stereo into the master, what you're actually hearing is that more of that separation of the left and right channels.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you're hearing more of the instruments that are in those channels. So then I go and I start looking at, okay, so now what frequencies will give the 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 snare drum a lot more
Yeah.
snap. Like
Right.
I'm looking for some snap and I'm looking for that attack on the snare drum, right? And in some of these recordings, they're not there because the sound technician and the producer made the drummer tape his wallet to his snare.
Right. Right.
Who does that?
Yeah.
Who does
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. That's
Right?
wild.
And it was to try to control the ring on the snare.
Yeah.
Now, a really good sound guy, right, will work to EQ that ring out of the snare because he wants to make you want that nice deep. If it's a
Yeah.
rock snare, you want that. If it's a piccolo snare, you want that snap, right?
I think that that gentleman you had on that worked with Nick Lagona, that engineer, um, they were good at really taking the time with mic placement and not doing anything other than like they'd spend a long time tuning a snare, putting the mic in different spots, and a lot of like I know like what I've read about some of their and his engineering was very very little EQ, like Perfect Strangers by Deep Purple. Nick Blagona did that record,
You
and they
gotta come. You gotta come over and listen to some of our mixes here in the studio. I think you'd like what we're doing.
yeah, I probably would. I mean, it's it's interesting. Like I think, like what you're describing is so simple too. It's like you're talking about panning and you're talking about EQ, and those were the fundamentals I think early on in recording. And then now there's so many choices with Pro Tools. Like I often ask, when you hear an old recording that's really well mixed, like let's pick Maybe I'm Amazed by Paul McCartney, right?
Right.
Great track, super limited as to what he was working with, right? Like very limited. Like he had a tape machine, he had a microphone. I don't think he had a lot of outboard gear, and it was very direct to tape and very, very, very basic. But I think because there's less choices, less bells and whistles, less knobs you could push, he was forced to just get a good performance and try to get the best mic placement and sound, and that's it. And then to your point, like panning and EQing and those little things that brought that track together. So
Look at
I
that
think,
beautiful city skyline behind you, man.
yeah, this is London West.
I
So
know that's a cool looking skyline behind you, and that beautiful, cotton candy clouds with the blue and sky
yeah,
behind it. It's
we get
awesome.
we get some really nice sunrises. Uh,
Yeah, it's beautiful up there. Can you add a little bit more light on your face? You're starting to fade. I think the sun's going down there.
yeah, hang on here. I can do that. We have
We,
to
we, so we're talking right now about recording techniques and things that people can do to enhance what they're doing. Um, and these re-releases that we're doing on the Helix tracks, you really got to check them out. So Mainline is the one that's going to come out, and the cool thing about it, like I said, when you add the stereo separation on this stuff, all of a sudden you're like, okay, that's like a cowbell, but it's a different kind of cowbell, not one I've actually heard before,
nice. Yeah.
right? So it's very, I
Looking
mean,
forward
we're
to it.
talking 1981, so this is probably a 1970s cowbell,
Yeah, more
right?
cowbell.
Yeah, so it's probably got and it's got this really, really, really clunk, clunk to it, right? And and before I started opening up the track, it was kind of buried in the mix. And all of a sudden, as soon as I started opening up the track, and I go, okay, cowbell, what frequency range does cowbell like?
Right,
So
right.
I
What is
start
it?
dialing that in on the EQ, and it's not doing a lot to the mix, but you're now all of a sudden hearing the cowbell a lot clearer in that frequency that is clunk, 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 right? And it's right there, man. It's like just one of those really, really great moments that it's
Yeah,
perfectly used in the song, right?
that's awesome.
And because it's such a feature instrument of the song, now I'm able to bring that to the forefront for the listener who can now appreciate that somebody's standing over here on the right side of the room hitting that cowbell.
Right. Yeah, yeah,
So now you're actually hearing it as it was actually recorded. And if you were to hear it live in the studio, that's exactly what you would hear is the cowbell, the guy playing the cowbell in the right channel.
yeah, yeah.
And you
I wonder,
actually hear it panned a little bit into the left, but it's mostly into the right channel.
wonder where they would have recorded that. That's such a long time ago, eh? And
1981.
wow. And then quickly things progressed, eh, for the band.
That's out at Springfield Sound.
Yeah.
That was an old schoolhouse made into a studio. He had bands like Budgie that recorded there. I mean, there were a lot of really cool bands that recorded back there in the day. Um, Brian could give you a list of all the different bands that. Do you remember a band called Busker?
No, I don't actually.
So Busker was a band that came after a band called Whitehorse. Do you remember
Okay.
Whitehorse?
No.
Paul
No.
Hackman was in that band.
Oh, okay.
And Paul Hackman was in that band before he went to Helix. He was in Whitehorse with Randy Doughty, and so Randy Doughty was a singer, but he played I think he played percussion in that band.
Oh, cool.
They had a drummer and he played percussion. And he had congas and all that stuff. And I remember like they used to do Santana and stuff like that, right? Like
That's awesome. Good
really
music.
unique cover stuff, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, Hackman left that band, went from there on over to um, Helix, and of course, never looked back, right?
Yeah. I got to
Uh,
write Paul Hackman. I remember being at his house, like after I sang on some of their stuff, and then he was so supportive, and we were actually working on ideas back then. So
right.
I was writing music with Helix with Paul way back.
Uh, we're coming up to the first period of overtime here, so we're going to end the show shortly. But one thing I wanted to talk about quickly before we go off that track is this. When you look at when stuff was recorded back in the day, because the White Lace and Black Leather album that got recorded at a time. I think there was a bass player in the band at the time that disappeared.
I worked with him too. Yeah.
Yeah, he
Mike.
was like Bill Barocco.
Yeah, Mike.
He disappeared. He played on that album and he played on the road with Helix and then he disappeared, right?
Yeah, it's in Brian's book. Yeah, there's quite a story to that. And then a few years ago, I got to produce the original Helix with Brent and Fritz. God bless them. Uh, Everybody was there, obviously, except for Paul.
Hey, if I can get Brian to come on the show in the next little bit, will you come back on with him?
Sure, yeah.
That would
We
be fun.
we had the band that you're talking about with that bass player in London recording It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll. So we had Fritz on drums, Brent on guitar, we had Daryl, we had Brian, and then we had the Mudman come in and do the bagpipes for the
So
song.
where is that? Where is that recording?
Brian has it, believe it or not. And like on the Christmas record, we had done songs by McCartney.
Is that a song that should be published?
They wouldn't let us publish it. AC/DC wouldn't let us put it out.
I can probably get licensing for it.
You could. That would be great because we could not, like, we do a McCartney song, licensing, no
Hey,
problem.
listen, I got licensing for Pink Floyd music.
That would be great because we have of It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll with Brian Vollmer, the original Helix, the bass player that played on Heavy Metal Love, and it was a one-time thing. He came in out of nowhere. They hadn't seen him in 25 years.
Right.
He recorded this track with us, and we added another little verse section too, like there's a little story in the song about the band playing with Ian Gillan.
Right.
And, yeah, so it turned out pretty cool. It would be good to get it out. Have to talk to Brian about that.
Yeah, we have a few bands that have done cover tunes.
Yeah.
And a band called Creatures of Condition. These are a bunch of older musicians that have been around the Windsor area for years and years and years. And they did a remake of a status quo tune called Pictures of Matchstick Men.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And if you know the song, listen to the original and then go to our website and listen to it on our website for free. It's called Pictures of Matchstick Men. It's by a band called Creatures of Condition.
Okay.
Dave Whitehead. I don't know if you remember Dave Whitehead or not,
That's a
but
familiar.
he played in a lot of punk bands back in the day and played a lot at Call the Office.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Very familiar name.
Dave was a staple at Call the Office, and Dave was like, your professional musician, played all over the place.
Yeah.
He passed away a year or so ago.
Dude.
But he recorded a whole bunch of music with these guys called Creatures of Condition, and the drummer from that project, they had it all originally on 2-inch tape,
Wow.
and then the one of the guys that they work with digitally mastered it all,
Yeah.
and sent me the masters. And yeah, we released all of their stuff. Donnie's still working on some stuff that they're going to be putting out. Good writing, really great writing, because these guys are all musicians that played the whole Windsor, Amherstburg, Detroit music scene for years.
Right. That's a whole
Right?
nother, yeah, it's a cool pocket.
That was a whole cool pocket down there, because you had a mix of, blues players and a lot
Mhm.
of rock clubs, harpos over in Detroit. Some really, really great bars that these guys used to play at back in the day in Detroit. And
Yeah.
then they would play Windsor, Amherstburg with the Amherstburg, and then there was the Rib Fest down
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, quite
Um,
a music scene down there. And then all the radio leaking in from the States, right?
yeah,
So,
I think it'd be really cool to get Helix to play at the beach down there at Seacliff Beach down in Leamington.
right. Yeah. That'd be a good gig.
There was it last year. I was gonna go down and um, 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 Rudy Sarzo was playing there.
Oh, cool.
Quiet Riot played a one nighter at Seacliff Beach down in Leamington. They
That's,
came across the border to play one show.
and that's where they did it.
Yeah, it was in Leamington. It was last summer down in Leamington, and I remember, you know, talking back and forth with Rudy, right? And I said, "Hey, I'd love to come down to the show in Leamington and meet you face to face because he's been on the show before, right?"
Yeah.
He goes, "Oh no, man, it's not one of those shows." He says, "We're there to do the show, and as soon as we're done, we're on the bus back."
Yeah. In and out.
Yeah, he said this was a one off thing that just became part of our northern tour through the US, and the promoter here wouldn't say no, and the money was right.
And
But
then,
in order for this to do the show, we said, like, no meet and greet and none of that stuff because it's just a one-off show,
yeah, right.
right?
Yeah.
We don't have time to do a meet and greet. They didn't even do merch
Oh, wow. Wow.
because he said there was too much involved in bringing merch over for the one show, right?
Yeah. Getting it across the border.
Yeah, so they didn't even bring merch, and so I wanted to meet them and never got the chance because they were in and out.
Yeah.
And he said, "We play somewhere close to you again. Let me know."
Yeah.
Because he said, I wouldn't mind meeting you. We spent like an hour together, so why not?
Yeah. He's a legend, man. I remember Rudy in Quiet Riot and in Aussie, right? He was with Randy Rhoads and,
Yeah, his approach to interview is a lot unconventional.
yeah.
You don't know how to take him sometimes. You don't know if he's just being concrete with you,
Yeah.
or whether he's being, somewhat levelly sarcastic about some things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
He's an interesting dude. Listen, it's been a pleasure having you on the show tonight.
And it's
We
been,
I always feel like we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg.
yeah, there's lots of stuff we could talk about next time. Next time.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have you on the show again. Gord Prior, great music singer, songwriter, producer. He is also a real estate agent in London. So if you have real estate needs or you have a family that has an estate that needs to be looked after, this is a guy who will go the extra mile to
Nice.
help you because he really believes in servicing his clients.
Yeah, I really
So
enjoy helping folks out. I've been doing it 20 years now, and I still enjoy it. I get up every day, my feet hit the ground, and yeah, it's all. And it's a cool job because I work with a lot of different types of people, but I also work with a lot of musicians. I end
when
up,
I met you, I didn't know you're a real estate agent.
yeah, no, it's
I
crazy.
didn't know that when because you and I
Yeah.
only met recently, right?
I mean, I work with everybody. I just sold a house for professors at Western, but I also, uh, I've worked with a lot of our colleagues in the music business. I've helped a lot of rock stars in the area with their housing needs. So
It's
it's a
it,
good job. Yeah, it's fun.
it's a great gig, and you have fun doing it. You like doing it. You like servicing your clients. You like to make sure that they get, the most for their money, and you are, I don't mind putting these plugs in for you because
Oh,
I'm
I,
a huge supporter of local business. So, you know,
thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's just you just got to take care of people, right? That's all.
yeah,
That's all it is.
yeah.
It's
So we're gonna have Gord back on the show, and we'll start digging into that iceberg a little bit more.
fun.
From Gord Prior and me, Kenny at Indie Tunes Records, and yes, Brent, I was probably bobbing in a deep fryer today.
Well, you had fun though, Ken.
That's right. This has been the Indie Show. I'm Kenny. You're not. Have a great end of your week, everybody.